Good morning, brothers and sisters. As we remember the Lord today in the breaking of bread, we are encouraged to remember his return. The Apostle Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians that as often as you eat this bread and drink the cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Now, why is it important that we consider his return as we break the bread? Well, his return results in the manifestation of the fullness of the salvation that Christ accomplished on the cross. The author of Hebrews speaks of everything being in subjection to man, that is, to humanity. But obviously we don't see that yet. But then the author goes on to say, but we see Jesus. The return of Christ brings about this change when he comes to reign on the earth. Further, his return brings about resurrection, that is, to bring together of body and soul, which death had separated. Paul calls this the redemption of our bodies, and he also calls it a victory over death. Now, death is that awful consequence of sin, and until death is defeated, our salvation is not yet complete. Also, the return of Christ results in all of humanity, indeed all of creation, recognizing the lordship of Christ, every knee bowing, every tongue confessing that Jesus Christ is Lord. Now, Peter reminds us that we are waiting for the fulfillment of the Lord's promise, this promise of a new heaven and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. You don't need to look very far to see that righteousness is a stranger and an alien on the present earth. But his return will change all that. In summary, his return completes our salvation and reverses the curse on all creation, and God gets the glory for accomplishing a complete salvation for his people, body, soul, and spirit, as well as restoring all of creation that fell with us. Now, how are we to respond in anticipating the return of Christ? Peter tells us that our response is to be living lives of holiness and godliness. And we also are told to eagerly wait for him. And Paul reminds us in 1 Thessalonians, as we consider the resurrection of those who have died and gone on before us, that we are to encourage one another with those words. And finally, today, as we remember the Lord in his supper, we proclaim his death until he comes. So we are to remember the death that Christ died for our salvation, a complete salvation, body, soul, and spirit. So as we consider the Lord Jesus and his death, resurrection, and indeed his return, I'd like to read a few verses from a hymn. It's in our hymn book, number 424. It says this: creation groans beneath the curse, rebellion's just reward. We long to see the fall reversed and Eden's joys restored. So weary of our traitorous flesh, of sin we hate yet crave, we yearn to see temptation's death, indwelling sin's dark grave. We want to hear the joyous cries and join the ransomed throng. The Lamb is worthy, praise will rise from every tribe and tongue. We joy to fix our gaze on Christ, though now our view is dim. We long for heaven's grandest prize, to see and be like him. Come quickly, Lord, make all things new, redeem the church, your bride. With longing eyes we look for you, her home is at your side.